Hello, everybody. Jan Rutherford here with Self-Reliant Leadership. We are back for LinkedIn Live office hours. We're talking about that book, Becoming a Self-Reliant Leader. We are on, I think, episode 10 of all the episodes we've done. What we're trying to do is cover a chapter from every, a chapter from the book in every episode. And what we've done is we've gotten people that have participated in our Crucible expeditions over the past 10 years to kind of tell their story. And today I'm really thrilled that my very good friend and a past participant, Crucible alum, Jim Peters, is joining us today. There he is. Jim, welcome.
Good morning, Jan. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, and for those that are joining the recording, again, we're glad you're watching. And if you're joining live, we'd love to hear from you in the comments where you're dialing in from, and if you have questions along the way for me or Jim. And Jim is the founder of Citizen Engineers, and you're about the 1-year anniversary, you were saying.
And co-founder with my business partner, Kelly Smith.
Right.
And yeah, we're about ready to celebrate our first full year in business on August 2nd.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And once you become an entrepreneur, it's kind of hard to think that you could go back to not being one, don't you think?
Oh, I could never go back. This is a good fit for me. I really love it.
Yeah. And how many years have you been at it, being a civil engineer?
30
years. 30 and the kind of projects you've done over the course of your career are what?
Well, I play in the transportation planning and engineering space. So I've done a lot of the, I live here in Portland, Oregon. So I've done a lot of transportation work with traffic signals for the light rail systems and bus rapid transit and a lot of transportation technology.
Yeah. And I mean, I always think of it, you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of it is figuring out ways to move people, pedestrians, bicycles, scooters, vehicles, trucks safely and aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a complex environment, but yeah, trying to create spaces that are comfortable for everybody. It's not just about moving cars quickly. It is a lot about safety and creating spaces that are good for when we're walking or when we're biking and so forth. And yeah, it's been a great career. I've absolutely loved it.
One of the things I always saw that you do that's similar to the business world is the same thing. I mean, in the business world, in a corporation, even a small company, we're trying to take a whole bunch of diverse people and move them around efficiently so that they get work done. And, I always think of what you're able to do, it's like flow, or what this episode is about is really rhythm, creating synergy. It's really similar, don't you think?
I think it's similar in its complexity too, because it's dynamic. There's so many moving parts. It changes hour by hour. And, but I think just standing up this business too, we've been really intentional about designing our culture. And I think that's a lot like designing an intersection. We're trying to set it up so the ground rules are clear, where we're headed is clear, how we work together is clear. That's been, something I've learned from you and in the Crucible along the way. And I feel really honored to have that ability now to design it for our company.
Yeah. Well, and again, so 30 years doing this, and then when you're not working, things you love to do.
I love to be out in nature. My wife and I love to get out backpacking and spend days out in the woods with just the pack on your back, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
And I also love cycling. I love riding my bike. That brings me great joy.
Yeah. It is kind of funny when you're backpacking that you realize, boy, you really don't need much. You
I
know,
love that.
it kind of goes
Yeah.
to Maslow. You need to stay warm and dry. You need to not be hungry.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not a lot.
There's
Um,
not a lot, and it's just you can just sit and slow down and absorb and get all the sights and sounds and smells, and
yeah,
that's really refreshing, rejuvenating for me.
yeah. Well, that's always the big takeaway from our Crucible expeditions. As you know, you got to slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Crucible that you participated in. You know, and again,
Yeah.
for a reminder for everyone, the Crucible is an expedition where we take um, executives that are kind of burned out, kind of needed a digital detox, and we pair them up with military veterans who are transitioning out of the service. And we just go out for about 4 days, 3 nights, and it's an opportunity to be with people where you have nothing to prove, protect, or promote. And so you can kind of be who you are. And though we take turns leading, you can kind of, for most of the Crucible, you can kind of turn off and just kind of follow and be in your own thoughts. And you were in the Wallowa Mountains of Oregon, near
Yep.
the Idaho border. But tell us what you remember most about that trip, because it was a big group that you were with, one of our bigger groups.
So many stories from it. A really memorable experience. So yeah, I think it was 2018 in the Wallowa Mountains, and one of the first things I remember is we started off walking up the trail in groups, and we were chit chatting, and some of the group was walking faster than others, and they walked ahead and they would pause and wait. And then the rest of us would catch up. And at one point, Jan, you stopped us and you asked the question, like, is this how you want to walk
Mhm.
up this trail together? You're doing this kind of slinky thing, going back and forth. And that was really eye opening.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't set the stage from the beginning. Like, how long are we going to walk before we take a break? Or are we going to all stick together and walk at the slowest pace? Or we hadn't met each other. How about we walk for a little bit and talk to one person and then switch and then talk to the other? Like, setting all those ground rules for how we were going to just walk up the trail together was a great analogy for how you work together as a team. Like, are
Yeah.
you being clear about how you want to work together?
Yeah. I always find it astounding that even just going from point A to point B in the woods with a group, that even if you stop every 30 minutes and communicate, it's not enough, because
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
will say, how long is the break? Do I have time to pee? Should I eat? Can I, retie my boots? How far do we have to go to the next break? What's the elevation gain? Is it rocky? Is it going to rain? Are
Yeah.
there mosquitoes? Should I put insect repellent? Like, you can't communicate enough. And then I think, we have a weekly 15-minute stand up for people all over the world, and we're communicating like this via
Right.
screens. And we think that's enough for people to be on the same page.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's so fascinating. The other thing I thought was really interesting about that is before you stopped us and pointed that out, that we were just,
Yeah.
naturally walking this way, even though it wasn't necessarily how we wanted to, is those of us in the back ended up just literally following. And the person in the front took a wrong turn. And Jan, you didn't say anything. You let us go
I remember that. I
the wrong
remember.
path, and nobody questioned it.
Yeah.
Like, it never crossed my mind. I don't even think I saw the why in the trail.
Yeah.
And it's just, wow, that was unbelievable. Like, wait a minute.
About
So I'm
that.
just blindly following here. And like, that was interesting.
Well, it's about situational awareness. And, do we have that in the work world? I mean, what I see so often in my line of work is, people literally working with blinders on.
Yeah.
Um, you
Yeah.
know, every day, all of us encounter people that are doing this. Oh my God, I'm so busy. Oh my God, I'm so busy.
So
And
much.
I'm reminded, we had a guy podcast. It was the chairman of JetBlue named Joel Peterson. And Joel said 24 hours is more than enough time every day to sleep, eat, take care of yourself, be with your family, do a hobby, work out, and do your work. And what I see so often is people thinking, well, these 10-hour days are just temporary. I'm going to get caught up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they realize, geez, I'm neglecting my family. I'm not working out. I've gained weight. It's sort of like, you've got to decide today, what a good life is, what a good day is, that, it's the urgent, important fires are going to be every day. And you've got to figure out how to deal with them. And again, it goes to this chapter of, how do you create a rhythm and synergy, for yourself and for other people?
Yeah. And, I think a lot of that starts with what do you personally value?
Yeah.
And really pausing and doing the deep work to think about that, to write it down, to let it sit and observe it, what could take months or years. But I got really late in my career before you had been telling me to do that and asking me what my values are, but literally just a few years ago, I finally figured it out. And it has been so valuable because I use those values so often in making decisions about what I choose to do. I'll give you one example. My top value is family.
Yep.
And my son is training to be a pilot. And so he was flying from Bend up here to the Portland airport last week. And so my wife was going to go out there and watch him land. I could have easily made the decision to sit here at my desk and keep working. There's plenty to do. But I was like, my top value is family. I'm going to choose to set work aside and go out with my wife, Lisa, and watch my son land at the Portland airport.
Yeah.
And that is so important for me to make that choice. Like, I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
I would not remember that time sitting at the desk. And so what do you personally value? And then use that to make decisions daily.
So he landed a Cessna at Portland International Airport?
He was flying a Bonanza. So Bonanzas are a little bit faster. Yeah. So he's been going a little longer distance.
But it's still complicated because that's Class B airspace. It's complicated. There's F-15s that fly out of there. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, really it was fun for us.
Yeah. Well, when he was a kid, he used to go watch the planes take off and land there.
Yeah. So we were the plane spotters this time. He used to go to the Portland airport when he was young all the time and plane spot, as they say, which is amazingly, there's a lot of people that do that.
Yeah. There's a place by Reagan National Airport. There's a park, and there's, you can just sit in the park and just watch the planes fly, right over your head. And there's tons of people that do that. It's really cool.
Yeah. We flew him down to LA for one of his birthdays, and we sat there on the side of the road next to LAX and have an amazing story there. We were sitting on the road. I'll tell it quickly. We were sitting on the roadside, and this LA police officer comes up and it just rolls down his window and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And we told him we're sitting here plane spotting. And, it was my wife, myself, and our two kids. And then he ends up getting out of his vehicle and comes over and talks to us. And my sons had their cameras. And so he was asking about their cameras, and he goes, "Oh, hey, I got a photo here you might be interested in." And so he starts flipping through his phone, and he's got a picture of him with President Obama putting a Medal of Honor around him. He apparently off duty saved somebody in a burning car in LA, and anyway, act of heroism. And then he goes, "Hey, I got one other picture you might be interested in." And so he flips through, and it's him escorting OJ out in handcuffs. police officer's name was Johnny. I forget his last name, but it was
Oh my
like, it was a wild
It
experience.
was like Forrest Gump, in the right place at the right time. you
Yeah.
know. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Well,
Say,
speaking of Forrest and movies, I've got a little video I want to play. It's a couple minutes long. It really highlights this whole idea of rhythm and creating synergy. So I'll be interested, Jim, as you watch it, what you take away from it, how it relates to the Crucible, how it relates to, the work world, being a leader and a team member. So let me add that to the stage, and I'll pull us out, and we'll come back in a second.
Again, number one priority ever since we started was start the day safe, end the day safe. Let's get everybody back the way we started. It was a bit of a rough night last night for some of us, but doesn't mean that it has to turn this day into something that we don't want to remember. It's the last day we're all together, physically. So let's try to kind of maximize the time as best we can.
So we hear a lot these days about rhythm and cadence, and oftentimes it refers to how often we're going to meet. But I think about rhythm in the form of pace. And you think about what we're doing right now is we've got an objective, and we've got to get there, and we want to get there at a certain time, and we want to get there all together. So we have to consider how everybody's feeling and be sensitive to that. And so there's a combination of pushing people a little bit and then being sensitive. Just a minute ago, our designated leader of the day asked, are we okay? Do we need a break? But the expectations were really clear about how often we're going to stop. And it really makes me think about one of the real tenets of leadership, which is to remember that people support what they help create. And think of it in the form of an equation of E equals Q times A. The effectiveness equals the quality times the acceptance. So quality is really your idea, the direction, what we're going to do. But the acceptance is really the commitment and the engagement of other people. And it's really important that we get that acceptance and that engagement. I'll give you an example. So you've got a perfect plan. It's a 9 out of 10. That's your quality. You basically sell that to the team. And let's say the acceptance is 4. 4 times 9, 36. But people support what they help create. If you basically say, I'm going to let everybody weigh in, and now my perfect plan that I think's a 9 out of 10, in my mind, it's a 6. But the acceptance is 9. 6 times 9, 54. 54, more than 36. So as you're going about things, of course, this is a rhythm and a movement out in the wilderness, but it's not dissimilar to what we're doing every single day. We're trying to get a whole bunch of people moving in the same direction at the same time with a common purpose and a commitment to the objective. What did you think, Jim?
I love that saying, people support what they help create. I use it all the time. I love your equation too, because I think there's so much truth in that. People support what they help create. We do it together. I can give you one example from the Crucible I was on in the Wallowas. So forget if it was the second day or the third day when we were going to climb up Aneroid Mountain.
Yep.
And I shared that story about how we had done the slinky thing on the first day.
Yeah.
Well, by this time, a day or two in, we had a designated leader in my group and a statistician. The statistician was responsible for making sure people had water and were taken care of and had food and we had first aid, that kind of thing. And my group, we knew where we were going. We were going to the top of Aneroid Mountain, but at the base of it, we paused, and our leader asked all of us how we want to climb this mountain together.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided as a group that we're going to go at the pace of the slowest person. Yeah. And there's no path up this mountain, you pick the path. And so my group decided the way we were going to climb this mountain together was we were going to pick a tree or a rock a bit up the mountain that we could see, and we were going to walk there together. And then we were going to pause, take a look around, and pick that next rock or tree or place up the mountain that we were going to climb to. And we did that the whole way up. And I say we worked so well together as a team, in part because of that. We were all part of making the decision about how we were going to climb that mountain together.
Yeah.
The people support what they help create.
Yeah. And you guys got up there the same time as the group that took the riskier straight route.
Yeah. Which was amazing, right? Because they went really fast at first. Like they were 3/4 of the way up the mountain and we were maybe a quarter.
Yeah.
But then they got in trouble and we caught them at our nice, easy pace.
Yeah. And what I remember most is if your team had been asked to go climb another peak right away, they would have, been like, hi ho, off to work we go. They would have been happy.
Yeah.
Whereas the other group would have said, no friggin' way, we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, because they, and this goes back to, the direction was up Aneroid Mountain, 10,000 feet. The pace was, your group that I was with went as fast as the slowest person because people were uncomfortable because of the loose rock. And then the tone was people were happy. They were motivated. They were cheerful.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't stretch people, to their limit, but they were willing to keep going. Whereas the other group might've been stretched to their limit, but morale wise, they were done.
That's so true.
Yeah. And, and I think, that's, for the people out there in public companies, what have you done for me lately? There's a number to hit every single quarter. So that's the direction and the pace. The, directions hit the number, the pace is every quarter. And then, we have leaders out there that think I'm just going to stretch these people and, and they're going to hit this number. Well, once they don't hit the number, they give up for the whole year. It's like, we didn't hit Q1. There's no way we're going to catch up, and they give up. Whereas, leaders that have compassion and treat people with humanity, hey, we didn't hit our number, let's dig deep. And, they've got people that are engaged and committed. Because right now we're lucky in the average company if 1 out of 3 people are actively engaged, happy to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big believer in the whole idea of humans at the center of work. And there's a great quote from Colleen Abdullah, former CEO of Wow, that I just absolutely love. She said that that when business leaders focus on the health and well-being of their people, profits follow.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer of that. So I don't know if the numbers are really the common purpose. That's what I've been questioning. Like in my business, the numbers are not our common purpose.
Yeah.
Our common purpose is compassionate leaders in transportation.
Yeah.
And we're aiming for that. And I believe the numbers are going to follow.
Yeah.
And
well, there's a book on my bookshelf over here on selling with noble purpose by Lisa McLeod. And she's a wonderful lady, leader, sales expert. And one of the things that, she talks about is, how much selling has changed over the past few decades. That it's not, the guy in a plaid jacket at the car dealership. It's really about being a great listener, somebody that can really understand problems, and then somebody that can offer up different solutions. And she doesn't, ask salespeople to ask themselves, how did you help the customer? How did you get them what they want? Did you sell something? She asks salespeople to ask, how have you made this person's life better?
Yeah.
And, I don't think that just applies to sales. I think that applies to leadership, to everything. Jim, so often in my work, we're talking about internal drama in companies. We're trying to fix everything. And part of me wants to say, let's talk about the customer,
That's so
'cause
true.
that's why the company exists. Your job is to make customers' lives better. And,
Yeah.
and again, if you're selling somebody something, if you're helping solve a problem, I mean, it goes beyond just the problem. I mean, there's feelings and, intrinsic things that we need to tap into. And again, it's about making a human connection, I think.
I do too. I was a business development director for a lot of my career, and I had a equation that I came up with for the key to successful business development. And I always said the key is we need some quality R&R, and the quality is quality work. But that's
Yeah.
kind of a given. Like, I need to deliver a good product that meets your needs. The R&R is relationships and responsiveness.
Mm,
And I really think relationships is the most important piece there. But it's like, if I have a great relationship with you, Jan, we could be friends. But if I don't deliver a quality product and I'm not responsive to your needs, you're not going to hire me again. It's like, hey, Jim, why don't we just be friends?
yeah.
So I need to have those three things, but it starts with the relationship.
Yeah. And the responsiveness is really the basis of trust.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Do what I say I'm going to do.
yeah. And
Right.
it's kind of like I'm working with a client right now and they're having trouble communicating some things to customers. And they're like, well, we can't communicate because we don't know the answer. It's like, no, you can communicate. You can
Yeah.
tell people we don't have the answer. You can stay in contact with them. Because that's what you mean. It's like if your flight's delayed, you want the airline updating you all the time. What's going on? You don't want the airline to say, well, I don't have an answer. I don't know when your plane's going to take off. We'll tell you when it's ready to go. I mean,
Right.
nobody likes that.
You know what? This is interesting because it's related to the transportation work that I do.
Yeah.
Um, Nowadays, if you're taking the bus, you can get the arrival time of the bus, right? So what it's done is essentially the bus schedule isn't as relevant anymore. I can just pull open my app and see the bus is 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
But soon after we started doing those systems to share the bus arrival information, there was some research done, and the passengers in that research showed that they actually thought the bus was on time more when we were giving them this information, when in fact it wasn't.
Oh,
But
wow.
their experience was better because they knew the bus was coming. They could see it's 3 minutes away now, and then it's 2 minutes away. Whereas if you don't have that information, you're standing there at the bus stop going, it's 5 minutes late now. When's it going to be here? Another 5 minutes? Or,
Yeah.
so that was interesting research. Like, the bus on time performance did not change, but the public
Mm.
perception of it did improve.
There was a story I heard. I don't know if it's true. I mean, it's been so long. It might be urban legend, but the story I heard a long time ago about Courtyard Marriott when they started. They had people stay at the first one, and they get feedback. And at one point, a bunch of the TVs were unplugged, for some reason, and a bunch of people were calling up saying my TV's broke. And they ran up there and basically plugged the TV in. And the people that had, a TV that didn't work and somebody came up really quick and fixed it had better reviews than the people that didn't have a TV problem.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, oh, you do?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's just, it's interesting how, that saying, don't let a good crisis go to waste. I mean, there's ways that you can always improve relationships, and again, we're all, this is all in the people business. And the thing I find myself saying over and over with leaders is it's your job to help people find purpose and meaning in their work and not view work just as a transaction where they're trading time for money, because I think that's what's going on in a lot of places right now. People are just trading time for money. And, because, and it's not because they're bad people, it's because, that they're not led well.
Yeah.
And there's a noble purpose to find in any work that's done.
No, I totally agree. Do you remember when you had Don Yeager on your podcast?
Mm-hmm.
And Don Yeager, author, writer with Sports Illustrated, he has interviewed some of the great sports leaders in our time. And you asked Don Yeager on that podcast what the magic was to a high-performing team. And he said, without a doubt, it's culture, and culture starts with purpose.
Mm.
And so that's coming from a guy who's talked with the greatest sports teams, people of our time, and it starts with purpose. I think you're so right. And I feel like I've been kind of mulling this over lately. Like, it's too easy for our businesses to get focused on the numbers. And then the numbers become like the common purpose, and we lose sight of and stop telling the stories of why this business started in the first place,
right?
To serve people. And so I've been wondering that, like, is that too easy to just lose sight of that? And then you're focused on the numbers, and then it's just all mundane. And
Well, Stan McChrystal, who wrote the foreword to our book, also said, a team is comprised of two things: a common purpose and a trust. Almost like it's the trust is tangible.
Yeah.
This loyalty, this I don't want to let the person down, that kind of trust. And I think what I think that's happening right now is I think a lot of it's it emanates, and again, I'm not a psychologist, but I think it emanates from a lot of pleaser tendencies. The board says to the CEO, "What are you going to do this year?" And they want to please the board, and so they give them a big number. And the board says, "Okay, good. How confident are you're going to hit this?" 95%. So they want to win. They want to keep their promise.
Yeah.
Then they say to their team, "We got it." Then they, instead of that number, they hedge. So they say, instead of 10,000, we need to do 11,000. And then it comes, and it passes down. And by the time it gets to the front line, it's some unrealistic expectations.
Right.
And instead of encouraging and motivating, it's kind of like the beatings will continue until the morale improves. And I think that's what's happening.
It's never going to.
We're not doing a very good job of appreciating people's effort and catching people doing things right.
Yeah. Can I share with you that I love the appreciation thing? Because that was another epiphany for me on the crucible I went on. And being the engineer that I am, when I got back from that crucible, I went searching for an acronym to help me remember some of the lessons on that trip. And I found what's turned out to be the perfect one. The perfect acronym to describe what it takes to have a high-performing team. And it's PERFORM. And PERFORM, the P is for purpose and values, which we've been talking about. You need to have a common purpose, understand your company values, your personal values. That's how you're going to walk together as the team. I think, interestingly, like when we were climbing Aneroid Mountain, that was a pretty clear purpose. We're going to that peak. I think in a business, it's a little harder to see what that common purpose is. Like for me, it's compassionate leaders in transportation. I don't know exactly what that's going to mean when we get there, but starts with purpose and values. The E is empower. People support what they help create.
Yeah.
Or have you given them the ground rules? Are you trusting them? Are you supporting them when they make mistakes? That's empower. The first R is relationships and communication, which we've been talking a lot about. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of time, as you've been mentioning too. That can't just be 15 minutes a month. Then the F is flexibility, because things aren't always going to go according to plan. So we've got to go with the flow. I mentioned I love biking. I love being on my mountain bike too. One of the keys on a mountain bike is to hold the handlebars loosely. If you're
Mm.
gripping too tight, you're not able to flex with the roots and bumps and stuff that are going on. So flexibility is key. That leads to optimal productivity. That's the O. Optimal productivity is, hey, we have shared accountability. We're supporting one another. We've got these goals and we're all contributing towards them. It's somewhat an outcome of the relationships and communication. Then the second R, and this was the real epiphany for me, is recognition and appreciation.
Yep.
That is so important. The last day on the Crucible, we sat there around the fire and you had us go around and share what we appreciate about every individual in that room.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how powerful that was.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about it now that you got relationships and communication and power, appreciation. That's a lot of human stuff there.
Yeah.
Humans at the center of work. And then
Yeah.
it finishes with morale because we've done those things. Now we've got really good morale. We're working towards a common purpose where people support what they create. They're empowered. That we're showing appreciation regularly. And you've got this energy now where, yeah, we just climbed that mountain. Let's go do another. And I don't get that motivation from hitting numbers personally. I get that motivation from the real humans at the center stuff, the
Yeah.
really deep caring, being open with your communication, being vulnerable, creating a safe environment, being very inclusive. So that acronym, like I keep hearing it even in what we're talking about, and I use it all the time. Like that,
Yeah.
that helped me crystallize a lot of what I learned on that Crucible.
Yeah. And it also speaks to what you value.
True.
So as a leader, you would remove the ambiguity about what it is that what's important to you. I think that's really powerful. I always think, at the end of the day, the reason there's 40,000 books on leadership on Amazon is because we haven't figured out the recipe. But, the commonality and what we're always trying to do, it's a balance between all kinds of things, strategic and tactical. But the main one is really the balance between relationships, fostering in developing people, and at the same time getting work done through those people, the results.
Yeah.
Every leader is responsible for getting results done through other people.
Yeah.
And there's so many leaders that don't understand I've got to inspire to influence.
Yeah.
And, so what they'll do is they'll do their old job. They'll do their job, and it's like, no, you've got to figure out how you inspire them by influencing them. What you're really talking about is changing behaviors, habits of human beings.
Yeah.
No easy feat. And when I think about, tactically, the things that we don't talk about enough for us to work together as humans is to go into a lot of detail. And this is what we did in the chapter, and I won't do it here, but, how are we going to communicate? There's two way, there's one way, there's business hours, after business hours, what's the rules?
Yeah.
How are we going to meet? Most people would say too many meetings. So how can we have more effective meetings? How are we going to debate? Have healthy conflict? Is it a safe environment? Can I balance holding my views lightly with risking saying what I think? And lastly, how are decisions made around here? Ultimately, when a whole bunch of people are talking, it's about getting work done, but a lot of that involves decisions.
Yeah.
And you really understand, who has authority, what the process is, and what the criteria are for those decisions. So, that's what we tried to cover in the book in a lot more detail is, those things get just sort of glossed over. And then we wonder, why is the culture the way it is? Because it wasn't intentional. It was basically a default culture.
That is so true. I think, so much in that I just absolutely love, like that. Hold your views lightly. I mean, you've said that one to me for a long time, and it's something that I share all the time now too, because, I just recently heard somebody else. I'm on the board of the Community Cycling Center. Our new executive director, Ruben, there said, my perspective is incomplete. And I loved that, right? Because I have my own lived experiences and perspective. I think that's similar to holding my views lightly. Like, I don't know everything, not even close to it. Why am I holding on to this thing so tightly? Like, I need to see different perspectives. And so,
oh, I really like that, Jim. My perspective is incomplete.
yeah.
I can think of a whole bunch of questions I've been asked over the years that would have been a really great response.
I know. Well, and sometimes I find myself even now, like, I just latch on to some idea, and then later I'm like, why was I holding on to that so tightly? Like, why did I think I was so right?
Yeah.
It's just, I got to keep challenging myself with that. And I also think that, get a little feedback there, but that decision thing is a really, we rarely define who has the decision authority, what the criteria is, and what the process is.
Yeah.
I think that leads to a lot of, I don't know if the right word is angst in the business place, but you have different expectations there about who gets to make the final call, and that can lead to trouble if you haven't been clear about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just so funny. One of the things that you and I have talked a lot about is, being bold.
Yeah.
But we're all struggling with, I think pride and ego gets in the way a lot. And, I think that's, it's this balance of confidence, and, sometimes this self-righteousness and our ability to really understand how we affect others and can we regulate what's best for the team. But, part of what we've really talked about is not as much about, what you do individually. I mean, as a person one-on-one with people, a lot of creating the synergy and the rhythm, I think, is a design element. A lot of what you do. I mean, you're not a traffic cop. You don't go out in the streets and guide traffic. You create intersections and roundabouts and traffic light, synergy where, things move really effectively without intervention. You've designed an environment where you get the behaviors that you want. People move safely.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes leaders don't think about that when they create their environment. How do I basically create an environment where people can interact, really efficiently and productively to take care of customers? And again, a place where people are, enthused and find purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
So,
and things change, because when I started in this career and the country we live in, we're very auto focused, right? And so much of it was about efficiency. We wanted to move the cars efficiently. But today it's the industry is looking for a much more balanced approach, an approach that's better supportive of all of us when we're walking and biking, or, not everybody is able to own a car or able to drive. And so it's designing the transportation network to support everyone's needs. I think the work environment we're in has changed too, where it's maybe in the past it was the more, from the industrial age, how many widgets can you make, and just driving people that way. But now it's much more about really seeing the whole person at work and having that compassion and trying to support the whole person, not just when they're in the office.
Yeah, I think I think I've moved away from using the word change or transformation and I'm using the word adaptability a lot more. That, the leaders I work with, they'll get frustrated, I'm doing this and I'm doing that and it's not working.
Yeah.
Like, okay, are you willing to adapt?
Yeah.
Of course it's not working. I mean, the days of you getting everybody in the room and telling them the same thing at the same time and everybody goes like this are long gone.
No. Yeah.
You're going to have to adapt your approach to influence other people.
Yeah.
Or you can just be frustrated.
Yeah.
Jim, I have one thing I wanted to kind of read a little bit of the last part of this chapter.
Oh, good.
And then I want to give you the last word as we wrap today. But, this is one of the harder chapters I think we wrote in the book, the whole idea of rhythm, and creating synergy. And, Don Yeager would describe it as momentum. But I wrote, and Jackie wrote, alignment comes from a leader's focus on creating a team rhythm built upon a common purpose, directed toward a common goal. Creating and maintaining that rhythm demands a combination of vision, discipline, effectiveness, and adaptability, all with an ingrained sense of duty at the core. The strong, regular, repeated pattern of movement leads to a collective state of flow in which progress for the organization becomes inevitable. Communication is seamless. The team acts as one. Without the palpable rhythm, individual commitment and team performance are at risk. However, an environment that enhances team members' ability to identify and respond to each other's needs allows them to work together in ways that were previously unimaginable.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we concluded that chapter.
I like it. I mean, I see a lot of that acronym form in that, and it's making me think too, like how much work that takes to, like we've said, it can't be just a 15-minute communication once a month.
Yeah.
And my business partner, Kelly, and our employee, Sydney, and I have been doing a lot of work to create our culture and doing things like at the start of every meeting with the three of us, we have a check-in question every time. So we're really trying to make this not transactional relationships, but really get to know one another better and understand our strengths and weaknesses and what we value and really building that relationship. And you can't just do that in one meeting or one conversation every 15 minutes. And yet that time is super well spent because like what you wrote in that book, it leads to this high morale and that synergy to accomplish more than what you could without that relationship. And it takes the slowing down to speed up. You got to slow down to build those relationships, design the culture, be continually clear about the purpose and the values.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I remember being in a machine shop on a tour in Portland. And I remember the guy telling me, he's like, this looks like a well-oiled machine. It looks like, it's on autopilot. Remember that was the word he used. Okay. It looks like it's on autopilot. And he said, entropy, it is this close to all falling apart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it had been there, his dad started it. It was, oh gosh, the company was probably 50, 60 years old. And I thought, this is a leader that's not complacent. Yeah. And, that he's on top of it. And again, what might be considered a boring business, a machine shop. But yeah, well, Jim, it's just been great having you on, and thanks for, sharing your stories. Thanks for, I know I've worked with you a lot of years. I've told you before, I value our friendship way more than, our past business relationship. And, it's great that, to hear you, kind of say, hey, here's some things that I remember, but, I'll say this, and I think this applies to leadership is, I think if you're doing it right, you learn more than the people you're helping. And you have been one of those people that have taught me way more than you probably know. Especially regarding, thoughtfulness and patience. That to me is one of the things that's always made you, someone to emulate and an admirable leader.
Well, that's nice of you, Jan. I appreciate that because I've learned heaps from you. I mean, your influence shows every day in my life. So I'm very grateful for our relationship and all that you've given me, and really look forward to reading your and Jackie's book here.
Yeah. And the publisher sent this big poster, but just in case you can't see that, I'll throw this out there. This is comes out August 20th, but you can pre-order it now wherever you get your books. And we'd love for you to buy a copy for yourself and somebody that you're working with as an aspiring leader that you're mentoring.
Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, because the other thing, Jan, about that crucible, like, we were with each other, what, 3, maybe 4 days, that whole team.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I told you this, but when I got home and I started telling my wife about the experience, like, I just broke down. Started crying. And
I didn't know that.
No, and I was like, I didn't even know where that came from. But in that 3-4 days, we had built such great bonds with that group of people.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we did it in that 3 days together, but what you designed there, because you did the design up front that created that environment. Like, that was a really powerful experience and has really stuck with me. So thank you for doing that for the military veterans and business leaders. And
yeah, well, thanks, Jim. That means more than you know. And maybe that experience was doubly effective because I remember you had a Green Beret hat on.
I did. Yeah, right. I did. Yeah.
Well, again, Jim, thank you. And to everybody, we'll have another episode next week. So we hope you'll tune into that one. We've just got a few more to go. And again, I want to thank Jim and the crew that he was out there with in the Wallowa Mountains a whole 6 years ago. Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.